So here's some more news on the Gaza fronts. Not good. Not good news. Here is Donald Trump doubling down on his plan to buy Gaza, to buy it and to own it. So here he is, February 9th. This was tweeted out, 6:08 p.m.
Committed to buying and owning Gaza. As far as us rebuilding it, we may give it to other states in the Middle East to build sections of it. Other people may do it through our auspices. But we're committed to owning it, taking it, and making sure that Hamas doesn't move back. There's nothing to move back into. The place is a demolition site. It'll be, the remainder will be demolished. Everything's demolished. I mean, you can't live in those buildings right now. They're very unsafe. But we'll make it into a very good site for future.
There you go. Make it into a very good site for future development. Later on, he clarified that no, the Palestinians would not have the right to return to Gaza once the revamp is complete. So here he is making the case to level it entirely and build it into something new without any Palestinians there.
Well, everyone leaves, they go back. This has been going on for forever, right? Forever. Now it's essentially a demolition site. There's practically no building that's livable in the whole thing, on the whole Gaza Strip. I say we go in, we knock them all down, we just create some, no more Hamas, there's no Hamas there, there's nobody there. We move them into beautiful areas of the Middle East. I'd like to go to Egypt. They have a lot of land. I'd like to go to Jordan. I'd like to go to others. And we'll build beautiful communities for the 1.9 million people. We'll build beautiful communities, safe communities. Could be 5, 6, could be 2. But we'll build safe communities a little bit away from where they are, where all of this danger is. In the meantime, I would own this. Think of it as a real estate development for the future. It would be a beautiful...
We've been saying this for a year. He views this all through the lens of real estate development. That is how he views this conflict.
We'll put in an ice cream parlor. You'll have those cocktails with the little umbrellas. It'll be beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful piece of land.
Would the Palestinians have the right to return?
Spent. No, they wouldn't, because they're going to have much better housing, much better... In other words...
No, they wouldn't. Let's play that one more time.
Would the Palestinians have the right to return?
No, they wouldn't, because they're going to have much better housing, much better... In other words, I'm talking about building a permanent place for them, because if they have to return now, it'll be years before you could ever... It's not habitable. It will be years before it could happen. I'm talking about starting to build, and I think I could make a deal with Jordan. I think I could make a deal with Egypt. You know, we give them billions and billions of dollars a year.
Yep, we give them billions and billions of dollars a year. That's aid that he's now, of course, threatening to cut off if they don't take the Palestinians in. That's a segment for perhaps another time, but I thought I should mention that. Now, just to clarify, what about the Palestinians that won't leave? Because, of course, we have seen numerous interviews with numerous Palestinians saying they won't leave, which is, of course, consistent with any literate view of history. If they were going to leave, they'd have done so decades ago. They didn't exactly have it easy there. They didn't have it made until October of 2023. So if they were going to just get up and leave, they'd have done that. In fact, the entire nature of this quote-unquote conflict, and it's more of a theft than a conflict, but the entire nature of this conflict, if you want to call it that, is that they won't leave because it's their land, right? Like that's like, if you know the first thing about this, you know that the Palestinians are not going to willingly leave. But here he is saying they're all going to leave.
You just won't leave. Our team has spoken to many.
They're all going to leave when they have a place that's a better alternative. When they have a nice place that's safe, they're all going to leave. It's a hellhole right now.
But how are you so sure? Would the U.S. force them to leave?
You're going to see that they're all going to want to leave.
Yeah.
No, they're going to leave. They're going to leave.
Yeah, you're going to see that they're all going to leave. They're all going to leave. Now, as for this ceasefire that we have going, because this gets even worse, it gets even uglier. In fact, much uglier. And then this could get much uglier in a very short period of time. He rounds this out with a threat. If all of the hostages are not returned by Saturday at 12 o'clock, I would say cancel it, meaning the ceasefire, and all bets are off. All of them, not in drips and drabs. Now, keep in mind, the agreement was to release hostages a little bit at a time in accordance with the development of the ceasefire, right? Now, we probably have to say this for our YouTube overlords, but I'll say it anyway. Of course, we're not opposed to hostages being released. The goal is to release them in accordance with the phased-out ceasefire to make sure that the war does not continue. And, for the record, of course, there have already been numerous full and complete hostage exchanges put on the table in exchange for permanent ceasefires, right? So it is not in opposition. We don't say this in opposition to hostage release.
Yeah,
but of course,
Yoav Gallant came out and took personal responsibility for stopping hostage deals.
Exactly. But of course, you have to do it in phases to make sure that the ceasefire doesn't fall apart and the genocide does not continue, right? That's the whole point of that framework. All right, so here we go. Here he is talking about maybe that ceasefire should just be canceled.
I would say this, and I'm going to let that because that's Israel's decision, but as far as I'm concerned, if all of the hostages aren't returned by Saturday at 12 o'clock, I think it's an appropriate time. I would say cancel it and all bets are off and let hell break out. I'd say they ought to be returned by 12 o'clock on Saturday, and if they're not returned, all of them, not in drips and drabs, not 2 and 1 and 3 and 4 and 2. Saturday at 12 o'clock, and after that, I would say all hell is going to break out.
Okay, now
that is the Sabbath, so they are going to have to arrange some Shabbos goys to receive the hostages. But
yeah, right, exactly.
I understand they have a battalion of those. They have a ministry of Shabbos goys in Israel.
Right, exactly.
Do that kind of thing.
So I just want everybody to understand just how absolutely evil and vile that is. Because if the ceasefire were to abruptly end Saturday at noon, what you have to understand is the carnage would likely reset to what it was on October 8th, 9th, and 10th. Because don't forget, you don't have Palestinians in camps and safe zones now. A lot of them have returned home, or at least to where their homes used to be. So a lot of them are scattered throughout these cities now, both in the north and the south, not in camps and safe zones. Not that the safe zones were really all that safe. Obviously, we've reported more times than I can count how many times Israel fired on the safe zones. But you don't even have that pretense anymore. Now it would just be like starting this entire thing all over again against a people who have already suffered immensely in unspeakable ways for 15 months. Now Donald Trump changes the terms and says, no, we're not going to do a drip, drip, drip hostage release. You give them all back without agreeing to phase 2, apparently, or else hell will break out. What reason do we have to believe? What reason do the Palestinians have to believe that all hell will not break out once they give all the hostages back? Given Trump is on the record saying his plan is to ethnically purge the area.
Right.
So you're going to give all the hostages back, and then what? They're going to try and force you out anyway. And if you don't leave, of course, the only way to get you to leave is to attack you violently, just as they have been attacked violently for the past 7 decades, but especially, of course, in this context, over these last 15 months. So it is just psychotically and diabolically evil to impose these
he's just
terms.
playing Netanyahu.
Yeah,
playing
right.
him.
No, he's just playing him. He's just playing him. This is why I said, folks, it is now no longer an exaggeration, nor is it unfair to call Donald Trump a Nazi. He brought Netanyahu to the White House, granted him a victory after perpetrating the most sinister and sadistic crime of our lifetimes. That is what a Nazi does. This is also what a Nazi does. We're going to change the terms of the ceasefire with less than a week's notice, promise all hell will break loose if you do not comply, and even if you do comply, our goal remains to force you off the land anyway by force if necessary. Now, if you think there's any chance of a ceasefire being put back together, it's a show. This is reported by Haaretz. Israeli sources believe Netanyahu intends to derail Gaza ceasefire as delegation heads to Doha. Israeli sources believe Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu intends to sabotage the hostage release deal, and the delegation heading to Qatar will not advance stage 2 of the agreement. It's a show, said one source. Netanyahu is signaling quite clearly that he doesn't want to move to the next phase. He's sending a team without a mandate and without the ability to do anything. The source believes the images of hostages being freed have significantly hurt Netanyahu in the polls. Right-wing voters see that we haven't defeated Hamas and its operatives are still roaming with weapons. The signs on stages in Gaza during the hostage return events mock Netanyahu and reference to his total victory slogan, he said. Netanyahu knows he doesn't have a government if he proceeds with the deal. Netanyahu's still on trial for corruption, by the way. Right. Those have not stopped.
Yep.
Another source warned that Netanyahu's conduct could jeopardize even the stage 1 of the deal. The process is not working. Hostages are being released, but Hamas is doing this with the expectation of a second stage, leading to a full ceasefire and Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. Once Hamas realizes there won't be a second stage, they may not complete the first, the source said. Add to this, the State Department lays out plans for $7 billion plus arms sale to Israel as Netanyahu visits D.C. So Michael Tracy sums it all up pretty nicely. Trump now says that unless Hamas releases all remaining hostages by Saturday at noon, Israel may resume the war and let hell break out. Looks like he's intentionally blowing up the ceasefire framework shortly after transferring 2,000-pound bombs to Netanyahu. Yes, it sure does look that way. And it looks increasingly like what I said about a week ago is true, which is that the whole point from Trump's perspective of negotiating the initial ceasefire was to get some hostages out so he can have a nice photo op on Inauguration Day and come in with the goodwill of being the quote-unquote peacemaker. But now, as you can see, he doesn't have a long-term plan for Gaza that includes the Palestinians, so he wants to force them out. Plus, Netanyahu's having political problems, which we always knew he would have major political problems once the war ends. It's pretty much common knowledge now. It's almost a fact. It's almost a given fact. That's how wide and broad the consensus is amongst all corners of the political news and commentary space, that Netanyahu has no political career past the end of the war. That's why he's keeping it going. Right. So this is becoming a big problem for him. Trump is having a big problem here because what if the Palestinians refuse to leave? He can't commit troops. That would be too unpopular. So what's he going to do? Well, what's he going to do? He's going to help Netanyahu sabotage this deal. Right. And the bombing is going to continue. I hope to God I'm wrong about that. We now have 5 days to find out. And even if they do give all the hostages back and the ceasefire remains in place, how long does that ceasefire remain in place when the Palestinians refuse to leave? So when you add all of this together, this is now genocide and ethnic cleansing by Netanyahu with the explicit help now of Donald Trump, which is why Spanish politician, she's made a bunch of great videos, Ione Belarra, I hope I said that name right, I'm not sure, but she's made a bunch of videos of this nature for the past year or so. Netanyahu is a genocidal perpetrator, but by supporting him, Trump is too. So let's take a look at this.
Norteamericano Donald Trump y Netanyahu se reunieron en la Casa Blanca. El objetivo de este encuentro era dar luz verde, dar apoyo explícito por parte de los Estados Unidos a los planes de exterminio del pueblo de Palestina, particularmente de sacar a toda la población palestina de Gaza. Esto es un crimen contra la humanidad y es colaboración explícita con genocidio. Desde aquí quiero preguntarle al Gobierno de España si no va a romper de una vez por todas los lazos con los genocidas. El alto al fuego, ya lo hemos visto claramente, no frena ese ansia de exterminio del pueblo de Palestina del Estado terrorista de Israel. Por eso necesitamos mantener fuerte, necesitamos mantener alta la presión política. Es hora de romper todos los lazos con los genocidas y particularmente de aplicar un embargo total de armas que nos permita hacer la presión suficiente para que este genocidio termine. Y por supuesto hay que llevar ante la justicia internacional no solo a Netanyahu, sino también a la administración norteamericana y particularmente al presidente Trump, que está siendo colaborador necesario en este genocidio.
No lies detected there. No lies detected there. So, I said this on the last couple shows. It's now not hyperbole to call Donald Trump a Nazi. I'm also ordering a temporary, reprieve on the term Trump derangement syndrome now. I don't really want to hear about Trump derangement syndrome when he is overseeing this. I'm sorry.
Well, you know what's interesting. We spent a year and a half saying the same thing about Biden, that he's a Nazi, that he's enabling a genocide, that this is a genocidal administration. And a lot of people who are defending Trump now, they liked that. They liked that. But apparently when you apply it to Trump, it's Trump derangement syndrome, or what I'm seeing from a lot of the MAGA from Palestine people at this point is, well, what you going to do?
Right, exactly.
What you going to do? It's over. It's over. What are you going to do? It was absolutely hair on fire when Biden owned it. That was predictable. We knew that was coming.
Of course.
All of these people in the space, you just did a piece about them all coping as soon as he unveiled his Trump Tower Gaza edition plan.
Right.
It's as the horrific images start to come in from the inevitable consequence of these policies, which, yes, we knew this was going to happen, because in what world would Netanyahu honor this? We always knew they were going to find an excuse to break the ceasefire and to continue the genocide, and Trump would sign off on it and enable it. So now what are all these clowns going to do as the same or worse images that we saw under Biden start to come out of Gaza? Or will they not? Will Elon now suppress them from X in a way that he didn't when those images were hurting Biden? Is it going to become now very difficult with the clampdown on TikTok and Elon owning X? Is he going to allow a lot of images like that to be distributed? We'll see. We'll see. That remains to be seen. But if images like that are coming out, and certainly we'll be getting them from some of the international press, what are the Dave Smiths going to say then? What are the Ian Carrolls going to say then? What are they going to say?
Big bag of shit to be holding. I'll tell you that. I will tell you that. And, look, I mean, we don't know for a fact that was the conversation that happened behind the scenes. But when you look at the sequence of events, I think this is quite plausible that his advisors said, sir, Mr. President, I can tell you as someone who has, a basic knowledge of Middle Eastern history and politics, that the Palestinians are not going to leave. Right. And so if you make that your policy and Netanyahu agrees, at that point we are stuck having to enforce this policy as the United States.
Right.
So what we should probably do is figure out a way to sabotage this ceasefire so that Israel could just finish the job themselves, so that we don't have to commit troops, so that our position looks more or less like Biden's position, so that the America Firsters won't have to send their children to Gaza to go die in a war for Israel. We better just figure out a way to blow this deal up so that Israel could just keep killing them. And I guess they'll just kill them all. I guess that is their plan at this point. Now, once again, I would love to be wrong about this. We're now 5 days away. I would love to be wrong about this. However, even if I am wrong about this, that gets you back to the first problem that I just outlined, which is their official policy now is these people have to leave, and they're not going to. So at that point, what happens? See, there was never a possibility that this would end on terms that remotely resemble any kind of justice. Any kind of justice. Justice is a fully liberated Palestine. And there was never any option. There was never any possibility that this would end that way. Which is why, and we said this before the election, we said, don't piss in our face and tell us it's raining with this Trump is going to solve this. It's not going to be solved on any good terms. It's going one way the wrong way, which is why people have to be oppositional to this administration.
Yeah, and if you were running around for 4 years, or for the last year and a half at least, screaming about Joe Biden and how this was a deal breaker. And all of a sudden, you can work with the Trump administration on this, and on this you disagree. I'm sorry, you're a fucking clown. You're a clown, because you could have said that about them. You could have said that about Biden. What, they weren't better about the NLRB? They weren't good, but they were certainly better. One of Trump's first acts was to just completely neutralize it by, illegally firing two of its members so that it can't form a quorum to make decisions and take actions. It's one of the first things he did. So, yeah, the Biden administration was bad, but if you're that morally flexible, then you could have made the same argument, right? I'll work with them on this. I'll work with them on that. Same argument. All of a sudden, now it's Trump. At that point, you have to admit you just didn't want to do pronouns. Like at that point, why would you support a policy that I'm not going to go so far as to say worse, because I think Biden would have, or Harris would have just slow walked us to the same place, whereas they're just doing it right out front. You know, a lot of the logic is probably, let's get the genocide over with at the beginning, so by the time we get to 2028, people forgot about it.
Yeah, this just would have taken a few years under Harris. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's the only real difference. Yeah. I don't say any of this to defend Kamala Harris. That's why we absolutely refuse to vote for her, because we were not.
Absolutely not. But Trump has turned into but Biden. You bring all this up about Trump. What about Biden? Yeah, we talked about it for 4 fucking years.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Yes, we're very well aware of the problems of Biden. That's why we didn't support him or Harris when she took his slot. We didn't support either of them, nor did we support Trump. We don't all of a sudden support Trump now. What he's doing now was very predictable. It has been very sad. It has been very sad seeing a lot of folks attach themselves to this administration, and we warned about it from before the inauguration that, this guy's probably going to go do a genocide, and then you're going to be connected to that. You're going to wind up being stuck in a position where you have to put out all these mealy-mouthed statements. Oh, he's playing 3D chess. Oh, did you see Netanyahu's face? Yeah, I saw Netanyahu's face. He looked like the devil who just ate the canary, to mix my metaphors. He was like this. He looked like a
It's a good
very
thing I rubbed
happy
one
cat.
out before I came out here, because otherwise this would be embarrassing.
That's how,
That's how he looked. And he said right after the press conference, or that night, whatever it was, on TV, on Fox News, it's a remarkable plan. This is the best plan I've heard from an American leader. He calls Donald Trump the best friend Israel's ever had in the White House.
This is what Israel has been trying to do for its entire history, to clear all these people out, and Trump just said he'll do it for them.
Yeah, and let me just make this very, very, very plain.
Full American support for clearing them out.
Yeah. At this point, now, this obviously predates this point, but obviously the viscera of the genocide and the just absolute horrors that we have all been exposed to over the past 15, 16 months, I feel very comfortable saying that if you support Israel, you are not just a political enemy. You are an enemy of humanity at this point if you support the Israeli regime. You are an enemy of humanity, which has broad implications, which means Donald Trump is an enemy of humanity. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is an enemy of humanity. Tulsi Gabbard, enemy of humanity. Kash Patel, enemy of humanity. You have no humanity if you support Israel, period. Which means I do not want to hear about collaboration with this administration at all, just as Anthony Blinken is an enemy of humanity, and Joe Biden, and Kamala Harris, and Doug Emhoff, and whatever band of marauders they would have put in high places.
And Kamala Harris,
Kamala
who
would have kept everybody in
emphatically
place.
promised to keep arming Israel. Emphatically promised.
Yes, exactly. So they are enemies of humanity. And the mature response to this is to organize. And how do you organize? You organize workers who have common class interests, and you make, as part of that worker organization, an anti-war and anti-genocide demand. And that is why I support Workers Strike Back, as strongly as I do. Are they the end-all, be-all of organizations? Are they going to take over the government? No, we're talking about a small grassroots thing. But they'll partner with other organizations. We will build it like that. Now you say, well, how long is that going to take? Well, it's not going to take as long as trying to work within this system with any of these people. These people are enemies of the human race. If you are against Palestine, you are an enemy of humanity, period.
Please clap.